Hi, Nate Schulte here with another episode of Discovering Battles with Nate. I have actually done two today, but this is the second one. And right now I'm going to be talking about the Battle of Shiloh. So, the Battle for Shiloh took place in April 6th through 7th, 1862. It is called Shiloh, also known as Pittsburgh Landing. Now, this took place 25 miles north of Corinth, Mississippi, and it took place along the Tennessee River, which was very valuable to the Union forces because with the Union forces, they were able to get their gunboats into Confederate territory and be able to have more firepower with the gunboats, because with gunboats, they had more cannons and they were able to maybe even possibly follow the retreating forces, or even be able to take out any ships that were actually in ports. So this is how that river was valuable. The leaders for this were General Albert Sidney Johnston, and his XO was Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard. Now, Beauregard was one who was that attacked Fort Sumter see my previous episode of that. But as for the Union forces, they were under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant. Now, the men under Grant's command rounded up to 30,000 men, while 45,000 were under the command of Albert Sidney Johnston. What happened was, it was early April, and by April 4th, the Confederates were supposed to engage the Union forces, but because of bad weather and disorganization, they weren't able to get it on time, but it wasn't a bother to Johnston. See, Johnston wanted to keep his eye on the prize, and he didn't want to get all bent out of shape because he was afraid that if he did, he'd lose his concentration with fighting the battle. If you lose your concentration as a general in battle, or as a strategist, or as the leader, you're not going to make very good choices there, which is where Johnston tried to, say, okay, we're going to still get to them. Eventually, around 5 o'clock in the morning, Confederate forces were outside of the Union forces in the woods, and then they just engaged and attacked. Thousands of them. They charged out of the woods south of, over by Shiloh Church, which was also Shiloh Meeting House, but they call it Shiloh Church. Well, eventually, Confederate forces drove the Union away from the church around into the Peach Orchard, or the Hornet's Nest, which took place around 9:30. And Union forces under William T. Sherman, who would later lead an attack to Georgia, and anyways, he retreated there. They were pushed to Savannah Road eventually, but the heavy fighting took place at the Peach Orchard, which was known as the Hornet's Nest. Now, it was called the Hornet's Nest because one of the generals there thought that the buzzing of the musket balls sounded like hornets' wings, so hence the name Hornet's Nest. But at the Hornet's Nest, General Hurlburt and Prentice, they held the Union center and left flank for about 5 hours, while Sherman and other divisions retreated. Johnston ordered 3 reserve corps forward to protect the right flank of the Confederate forces, but he eventually was wounded. Now, he ignored his wound and he tried to keep going because he's like, oh, so what if I'm wounded? I want to make sure this battle gets through. Eventually, he ended up bleeding to death, so he ended up dying, and it became General Beauregard who was the one to be in charge. but reinforcements from the north supported Sherman, and also Buell was en route. Now, General Buell was one of the commander that was on his way, but he would not get there until the next day. Now, reinforcements were going to be needed, even though it was because they were all retreating. Even though this was a narrow escape later on, but still, all the reinforcements were going to be needed in order to try to see if they can figure out a way to push the Confederates back, because they had retreated way too far. But the Union almost collapsed, and the retreating soldiers stopped around close to the landing. General Prentiss surrendered at 5:30, while the other Union forces were just like, no, we're not going to surrender just yet. We want to see if maybe we could finally find a way to turn this battle around, and I hope General Grant has some magic up his sleeve, because we're going to need it. And General Grant really needed a miracle to happen. But after 14 hours of fighting, around 7 p.m., the fighting paused just so everybody could actually just, relax and everything. General Buell arrived during the night. His forces crossed the Tennessee River here. These here are gunboats that I was talking about. But Buell managed to cross the river and get artillery units and also other reinforcements around here, while Confederate artillery units ended focusing on the Pittsburgh Landing. Now, they wanted to concentrate the firepower on the Pittsburgh Landing, because that could have been possibly, those boats could have been used to actually try to, get away from the forces with. That would have been the Union's forces' escape route, or also have a place where they wouldn't be able to land. However, the gunboats managed to attack the Confederate forces. Now with cannons, more damage can be done, because if you do a direct hit on, like, say, a whole regiment, they would all collapse, just like what happened over at Gettysburg in the episode of Day 3 that I was talking about. Same thing. Not to mention the fact cannons can cover longer ranges than a musket can. But anyways, the gunboats opened fire upon the Confederates, and then the Confederates, Beauregard realizing that he had lost the battle, because he might have been able to help push more of the Union forces there, but still, the gunboats were attacking. This was going to inflict more casualties, and not to mention the fact Beauregard got scared, so it was best to just retreat to Corinth, Mississippi. Now, this battle was just a lucky victory for the Union forces, and General Grant, he was pretty close to losing this battle. For the reason being, well, it's because, he got caught off guard, but he had a hard time organizing exactly a way to be able to turn the tide here, and the gunboats came to the rescue. Now, the casualties for this battle were, for the Confederates, 1,723 were killed in action, 8,012 were wounded, while 959 were missing in action or captured. Union had more casualties. They lost 1,754 men were killed, 8,408 were wounded, while 2,885 were missing in action or captured. Reason being is because Prentiss surrendered. That was one of the main reasons. My sources for this battle are the battles of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Now, I cited this in some other episodes. Also with the Great Battles of the Civil War by John MacDonald. Day by Day Civil War, Philip catcher. And then, of course, this one here that I have actually been to the Battle of Shiloh myself. Now, I bought this later after I went to the battle, but the driving tape tour or CD of Shiloh Battlefield. If you ever go to Shiloh, I highly recommend you get this, or unless you want to have a tour guide, so that way you can answer questions or ask questions. Hope you enjoyed this battle lesson, and I hope that you all are staying safe and healthy. For all veterans, thank you for your service. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel. Until then, Nate Schulte signing out. Good day.